Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Fortress of Solid Dudes. I'm your host for today. Again, a little under the weather, so if I sound nasally, I'm sorry guys. I'm Fernando Benitez, and with me I have the dudes again. We'll have Matt with me, Matt Schmidt. Say hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt. What's up, guys?
And joining us again, Jairus. Apparently he actually likes us, so he stuck around. Jairus, of all, how you doing, man?
Good. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, so guys, I'm going to sound like this. I'm not high, I promise you. I'm just super sick under the weather. On life. So today our topic of the week is going to be superhero mechs, or not mechs, but superhero utility belts and the practicality of their suits. Could we build it? Could they be functional? Would it bog down the person? Would they weigh them down? If they had a cape, would it flip over their heads? So it's going to be kind of that topic. It's super hard to be, I think, realistic with it because comics are meant to be fantastical. They're meant to be over the top. You know, obviously, women's suits as heroines, I should say, should not be wearing skimpy clothes. That makes no sense.
Red Sonja.
Exactly, Red Sonja.
Chainmail bikini.
But this is. You know, those are comics, and we read comics, we love comics, we love looking at the art because it takes us away from our real world, makes it a little more, fascinating. So at this point, I think we're going to look at things that could potentially be practical, but are they going to be practical to make? So I think we're going to start with Batman's utility belt. So Batman's utility belt here, this man hosts everything in that. I think over the years we have seen thousands of gadgets come out of his belt. Like whatever worst case scenario Batman is in, he has the out in his utility belt. So we're talking about batarangs, the grapple gun. I mean the
shark repellent.
The shark repellent.
And he's hanging onto his leg. He's just
so good. Smoke bombs, nets, literally everything you could think of. Batman freeze spray, explosives. Jairus, I know we're utilizing you for this one since you build a lot of stuff. What do you think the practicality would be of making this belt realistic? And do you think having all these cool gadgets that Batman usually always has seems like it's infinite? It's like a Mary Poppins, right? Like you just just giant staff out. How do you think this would be a feasible feat for Batman to build?
I think the first thing that I would think about with the feasibility of having a utility belt that has all this stuff on it is, like, how much is that thing going to weigh? Is he going to be able to move around? But if you're talking about how much it weighs, but then you look at, Bruce Wayne works out constantly and he's always fighting bad guys, so he's like super strong and able-bodied. Right. It's like an old man. And he would be able to carry a huge amount of weight because he's impractically strong in the comics and the movies. Yeah. Like, in everything, he is impractically strong, so you don't... Like, that kind of takes that out of the equation. Mm-hmm. Because if you had somebody that was doing what he was doing, it wouldn't be that much of a factor. But then, space to fit all that stuff, I think is the next thing that would be an issue, some of the stuff that he has in the belt... I don't know. What do you think is the most realistic thing he's got in the belt?
What do you think, Matt?
The most realistic thing is probably the batarangs.
Oh, I was going to say the grapple gun.
Because the grapple gun's kind of
super
attached to it.
But even the smoke bombs, they're like little tiny pellets that he just throws.
And he has those tracking devices. You never quite know what they are, but every time he flips over the bad guy, they just end up on their back, or they're explosives of some type. Those are realistic.
He's got access to that technology because of, Wayne Enterprises. Yeah. So... with Lucius Fox making
that's
him
a
all kinds of...
He's rich.
Yeah. So
money's no issue
like
here.
The tracking device, I think that'd be realistic, especially because they've got the money and the technology and the research and development department to be able to come up with the thing that tracks the trackers and the trackers themselves. So that's reasonable. But the smoke bombs, I think, I don't know all the science behind smoke bombs, but I know a smoke bomb I think most of them can't burn too hot, because if they burn too hot, then they end up burning up the smoke. The thing that's impractical about those is he throws it down and you instantly have a huge cloud. Yeah. It's like, to create that, it's got to be either particulate that's dispersed by an explosion, Which, I mean, that's...
I'd say combustion and impact, right? You can't just be like...
Right.
And...
So it's got to explode to disperse everything. Well, I mean, that's not... Like, it's supposed to be based on old ninja technology. They use that as a distraction or a way to get away. They'd throw down a smoke bomb and obscure where they're at, and they could run away real quick and nobody'd be able to find them. But in reality, ninjas didn't use smoke screens. They just used firecrackers, basically. And people would be like, holy... What was that explosion? And they'd run away while people were like scared because there was a loud noise. Because that stuff wasn't as common then.
Okay.
You know, so I mean that's what the Batman smoke bombs were supposed to be like based on.
Distract you.
Right.
So that he can
go
in and take advantage.
But the size of them, man, if you threw down something that small and it had an explosive charge in it and enough particulate to create a cloud, there's no way it could be that big.
Okay.
Like because you have to obscure someone's vision to the point they can't see you. You just can't contain that material in something that's the size of a large marble, you know?
I feel like they threw that in. You remember The Dark Knight Rises, the first time he fights Bane? And he tries to use the smoke bombs?
Right.
That seems like a realistic thing, because it was just like basically poppers
bang,
going.
bang, bang,
Like,
and he's like, what was that? Like,
that's probably how it would be in real life, is basically what you're saying. That's
right,
more true.
Right.
I mean, basically
Batman
those poppers
would be like,
that you get.
the Dark Knight. Bang! He'd be like, what, was that like a snapper popper that you got at Walmart? Like,
throw them at your feet. Yeah, like some Monty Python shit.
Yeah, that wouldn't do anything.
So I think before I want to move into the cape of the practicality of Batman's cape, but before we do that, hitting the belt again. How do you tell what you have in your utility belt when it all looks exactly the same? Like, is that also just as impractical? I mean, you get muscle memory, I guess. You're like, all right,
He'd have to train with it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. His dedication to just training.
Right.
And, you know, being the world's greatest detective and having that diligence. So I think we have to take that is Batman himself. His obsession, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
I mean, also that, to argue my own point, you have military guys, they have pouches all over, and they have their ammunitions and all their stuff carrying in multiple pockets, and they're like... ammunition.
Well, we change them all the time. Yeah, like as a grenadier, you'd have it was up to you to design it the best way that you could. You know, it was most functional for you. Laying in the prone position, you don't obviously want all your pouches on your stump, you know, on the vest on the front. So a lot of them would be to the sides and stuff. And and you really did have to.
Okay.
Because you know you might come back from a patrol and it'd be like, all right, that didn't work. You know, so you're always fiddling. So you're right. It did come down to a lot of muscle memory because we would make our configurations and then we go to the range. And that's what we practice with.
And going along with what he's saying right now, Batman is always, in the comic books especially, he has that foresight. Like, he figures out what the situation's going to be before he's in it, so he knows what to take with him.
Yeah.
So, he probably doesn't have everything on his belt all at the same time, because he's like, okay, I'm going to end up fighting this guy tonight, you know? Yeah. So I'll take these things with me. So he wouldn't have to have all of it, because he can foresee what the situation is going to bring, because he's so smart. The thing that is the most unrealistic is the grappling gun. I think that's
cool, though.
That's probably the most unrealistic. I can't think of everything that he's used throughout everything, but the grappling gun is like the power that you have to be able to lift yourself that far and have that thing grab onto just anything it touches, and then to use it in the ways that he uses it is unrealistic. But the Hacksmith on YouTube, he built a grappling gun. They ended up using huge LiPo batteries and a crazy powerful speed controller to try to make this thing work. And it had like a monster gear reduction system and everything. And they got it to work. They could do it. They could fire it. They used little blank rounds to pop the thing off of it. And they could shoot it pretty far.
Yeah.
And it worked. The problem was it's not fast. Like, Batman shoots that thing, it catches, and
then he's gone.
And he's gone, to the point that, like, his cape ripples when he flies off the screen, you know?
The grip strength, too. One-handed.
Right. That's just... That's unrealistic. But the power that would have to be contained in that grapple gun to be able to pull him up, I mean, that goes back to maybe when Wayne Enterprises has developed a battery that's unbelievably energy-dense, and it doesn't weigh very much, and he could actually use something like that, but then... I mean, they'd also have to develop the motors and the gear train, everything. I mean, I don't know how you'd hide the fact that they're making that for Batman if you were running all these parts through your R&D department, you know?
I'm sure
a major corporation, like, no, we need this planetary gear reduction set for a water pump. Like, no, like the technology exists for that stuff, you know?
Yeah, gotcha.
These are weird things. I mean, Batman's a genius. Maybe he can come up with excuses for why they have to develop this stuff.
I think that's his greatest power, is just fooling the shareholders. You're making me a lot of cool shit, and you have no idea that you're doing it.
Right.
So, I know Jairus, mentioned that whenever he shoots a grapple, like you see his cape ripple. How practical is a cape for the Cape Crusader? I mean, literally, that is part of his nickname. Now in Batman: The Dark Knight, and even in Begins,
Begins too.
But I think the Dark Knight was the one where he had the fabric where like he magnetizes it and he could change it into wings and then glide. Right. I don't think he has enough surface area to glide from building to building. I think that the cape itself would weigh him down. Well, in the second one, he got like a lighter fabric that, changes with magnetism, excuse me.
Well, it's the ability to keep him aloft. The cape would have to be huge.
Yeah.
I mean, because if he's flying on his cape like he does, it's literally exactly the same thing as being in a hang glider. Mm-hmm. Those things are giant. Like, they're not compact. And even if it was just the fabric, I mean, that cape, the sides of it would have to go out so far or so far back or whatever, and for him to be balanced in it, you need to have, your center of gravity has to be under it. So with the cape, it would have to extend way out to the sides and a little bit in front of him, so that his weight balance would be right to fly with it. So, I mean, the cape would be gigantic.
Bigger than a glider.
Yeah. Okay. At least the size of a glider.
Okay.
Because you have the weight of the structure in the glider, and if he can electrify the cape and make it rigid all of a sudden, which, I mean, that's not practical. At least the technology for that doesn't exist. Obviously, they explain that with Wayne Enterprises developing the technology for it, but the cape would, even regardless of that, the cape would have to be huge, so it would either have to expand and contract when he's not flying with it. Or you just have to have different capes. Tonight I'm going to fly, so I'll wear my flying cape. And just deal with having 20 feet of cape dragging behind me all the time. Or
he could unclip it, but
he just have the cool cape where he can cover his face and look scary, Like, you'd have to choose that option.
Just get rid of the cape and store a hang glider in the utility belt.
That's it. He's Mary Poppins, so you can store anything. So moving from DC into Marvel, let's talk about Captain America's shield. Because I know the Hacksmith built a version of his, but also in Civil War, we kind of got that joke of Spider-Man's, like, so Captain America throws the shield, knocks like some bridge or something. He's like, man, your shield doesn't really obey the laws of physics. Like, it defies it.
There's no way that obeys it.
So I think, what do you guys think? It is a cool concept. I don't think it's practical because it's built out of vibranium. Vibranium's supposed to absorb vibration, and when he throws it, obviously you're going to get a vibration off of the shield to ding it back. Like, you're changing your energy into, like, what is it? I don't know. Guys, if you don't know, I'm not a scientist. I just throw a lot of big words and hope they're kind of sort of right. I'm going to say kinetic energy. You're changing.
Well, see, the issue with
Jairus just looked at me. He's like, this guy's a fucking idiot.
Well, no, I totally know exactly what you're saying. It's all about, that shield has a certain amount of momentum when it's flying through the air, like when he throws it and it hits stuff. If it would have to not transfer any energy to that object to maintain the momentum to be able to come back to him.
Which is impossible, right?
That's impossible. But if he did that and he threw a shield at people, it would ding, and it would bounce off and come back, and they'd be like, oh, I didn't feel anything because there was no transfer of energy.
Yeah. But
so either it would be totally it would be ineffective because it doesn't do anything to anything when you throw it at it, or it doesn't come back.
Okay.
Like that. So when the Hacksmith made his, and I hope James doesn't get pissed at me for this, they did a little bit of fancy editing to make it look like he was throwing it and it was coming back. But I mean, magnetism, they used electromagnets to hold the shield to his arm, and magnetism, its draw decreases exponentially the further you get away from it, and it's rapid. Okay. Like it's they had overvolted 600 kilogram electromagnets. I mean, they were incredibly powerful magnets, and it would only draw the shield to it if it was, I think it was within 10 inches
of
the magnets. So if you say that, oh, well, it comes back because of the magnets, that just doesn't. And James talked about that in his Hacksmith videos, how you could never do something like that in real life. Like, the technology doesn't exist for it. Plus, it's just a shield. He doesn't have anything on him that's bringing it back.
Yeah, I think the only time he had it was in Age of Ultron, where he slams it and then it flips and then he catches it with the magnet.
Yeah.
And then he had the magnets on his back, but that was it. Like, all the other movies he had the strap and he just wanted to somehow throw it.
Who's the super villain in, I think it's Punisher, that can, he's like,
Bullseye.
Bullseye, yes. So I mean, he would have to have like Bullseye superpower also.
Yeah.
Because in order for him to throw it and ricochet it back to himself, not only would it have to not hurt what it hit, but he would also have to have incredible accuracy and a vast understanding of, he'd be a great pool player because he would have to be able to work out like exactly where to hit something so that it would ding off of that and then that and make it back.
And then it comes down to luck. Hopefully when I hit him, he falls this way and that guy's doing that. Right. And that guy's here. And then, I think the second guy just drops, the shield is fucked. It's all over.
I mean, unless he throws the shield so hard and so fast that it hits stuff and comes back to him, but he'd end up chopping people in half if that was the case.
Now that you mentioned Bullseye, I think the best superhero or villain that could do this would be
Captain.
I was gonna say Daredevil, because he throws his batons and they ricochet, but his power, like, obviously it's augmented hearing, where his sound makes a picture. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think that would be the most practical superhero that could probably ding off the thing if it would not lose its energy on something else and it could come back. I don't know. That's my take on that one.
I mean, if he had a little string connected to his shield, that would definitely...
That would be cool. It's just like fish it up, just hang on, let me roll it back. Let me roll back.
Behind the scenes.
So, sticking with the MCU and Marvel, we see Falcon. So, in the comics, he had just wings, kind of like Angel. They were just wings that an eagle would have. But in the MCU, they redesign his thing to be a jetpack that folds in, folds out, gets enough lift, has a jetpack that gives him some sort of thrust to fly. How practical is this one?
I think the wing size, again, would be the limiting factor there. I mean,
going back to the Batman thing, like you were saying, I'm like,
Right, especially since it's made entirely out. I don't care how light the metal is.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have huge wings when they're made out of fabric and it's a hang glider. I mean, if it's made out of any metal, even if it's all titanium or if it's some made-up metal, I mean, carbon fiber, I guess, but, and that's the thing with having rigid wings like that, especially ones that, when you've got jet propulsion and as fast as he turns and everything, you have to have, like, the tensile strength and rigidity in the components to be able to have hinges and points where it can move and collapse.
I think it does, doesn't it? When he turns, doesn't it kind of fold in?
Right, and he can fold them in to go faster, and then he can put them out, and when he can turn real quick. Well, it's like those G-forces on that. I was
just going to say, wouldn't you need a G-suit for that?
Well, he wouldn't, because whenever he's turning, the blood would be pushed to the front or back of his body. Okay. And he's not taking long, extended turns like a jet would, so the blood isn't being all pushed to his feet. So he wouldn't pass out. The problem is the wings would have to be able to sustain those level of forces, and... there isn't anything that exists currently that you'd be able to make an articulating wing set with like that would be able to handle the forces that you see in the movies and stuff. Now, maybe if you had unlimited resources, you might be able to make... I'd say you could probably make a collapsible wing set that's made out of, carbon fiber and maybe some other materials. It would be incredibly expensive.
Could you get the thrust to lift off, though?
Well, that's the other problem. So whenever you're going to fly like that, I mean, he would just... If you could make something out of carbon fiber like that, you might be able to make a reasonable gliding suit.
Okay.
But, I mean, if you combined the weight of something that created enough thrust to just lift you off the ground, the densest energy we have, like, by weight is fuel. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's one of the jet fuels. It's like the most energy dense. But even with that, you've got the weight of the fuel, then you have the weight of the motors, and you have the weight of the wings. So then your wings have to be even larger, and you have to have more thrust. So every time you take a step, that's why we have airplanes, because it's like to get all that on your body, you end up having something the size of an airplane.
Yeah.
So why not just sit in an airplane?
So you're telling me the Rocketeer was a lie?
But I love the Rocketeer.
That was a good one.
But then that's also like that is the impracticality of comics. Like said with everything so far, they explain it with, well, that's technology we just don't have yet.
Yeah.
I might be confused because I think
things are getting better. Like, we've got a lot of stuff that would just absolutely blow people's minds like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Just lipo battery technology is unbelievable. I mean, you can get a group of lipo batteries together and it'll power your entire house and then some.
Yeah.
Like, if you told somebody 20 years ago, oh, yeah, we've got these batteries that you can just buy on Amazon that'll power your entire house for, even if it's only for 10 minutes, people would be like, yeah. No. Like,
I gotcha.
Like, you can fit it in a shoebox,
Right.
Like,
closer
people would be like, I don't think so. There's no way that's possible.
Yeah.
But technology is advancing very rapidly. So, if we get to the point where batteries become more energy dense than, like the chemical energy that's stored in fuels, that would start to make some of these things possible. I mean, that's the biggest thing with Iron Man is, I think the most impractical thing about Iron Man is the arc reactor. That's absolutely necessary to explain anything that he can do.
Yeah.
So the energy behind a lot of these is probably the limiting factor, except for Batman. I mean,
Batman's Batman.
Yeah, he doesn't need any.
He doesn't need any batteries.
So
speaking of Batman, we're gonna jump back. Batteries not required. We're gonna jump back to DC. And we're gonna talk about Black Manta. So this character is always. Well, I'm glad they redesigned it in the new 52. I know you're a big Aquaman fan, so we're gonna hit a little Black Manta, and his old, I guess, Silver Age suit. It was like this giant metal thing that would just cover his head, and then realistically, and then like the bowl on top, and then the new 52 gave us essentially the Aquaman version, like the film version. It's almost ripped right out of the comic book. How practical is this? So this, I mean. I feel like it kind of could be, and it's explained with Atlantean technology, but it's essentially a diver suit covered in panels or armor or whatnot, with a jetpack, with an Atlantean, I think,
with a mantis head.
Yeah, I don't.
With his swords and his eyes blast
rays.
Yeah.
So how realistic is this? The practicality on this. Could he even swim? Could he swim underwater with
it? Would have to have thrust underwater, but first of all, the human body is incredibly not fluid dynamic. Like, we have huge. To do my Aquaman project, I did research on. I found a whole article by this guy that did research on the drag coefficient of the human body in water, and it's terrible. And the Black Manta suit just. It doesn't make it that much worse, but it's not shaped like any fish. Fish are very fluid dynamic. Obviously, that's what they do, is they move around in the water, so they're gonna be. But his suit is not. It would take a huge amount of thrust, and with his head being that big, I feel like it would just rip his head off, unless there was Atlantean technology connecting the helmet to the rest of the suit and made it rigid. But the whole suit is based off of magic. All the tech from Atlantis is magic.
And I feel like that's a lot how you could explain a lot of technology is, Thor's hammer. Well, it's magic. It's science that you guys consider magic. It's not created yet.
It defies the laws of physics, and it doesn't make sense in the real world, like, whatsoever. Yeah, and that's pretty much everything out of Atlantis is that way. Yeah, and since his suit is made from all that stuff, you could have crazy strong knives come out of it, but I don't know if there's been super advances in the area of metallurgy recently. What we can do with carbon and steel and other trace elements to make like really resilient steel is pretty incredible. Like, what it can sustain is wild. Especially when you think about people used to make swords out of copper and bronze.
Yeah,
the Bronze Age.
The Bronze Age.
Yeah, the stuff that we have now would blow those people's minds. I'm sure there will be advances eventually, but having those two huge swords inside your arms and then having them be able to cut through just about anything, that's the most practical part of the suit, and it's still impractical.
So I have two things. First of all, about blowing people's minds. I had this whole thing where I had a conversation with my friend years ago when like the first Transformers came out, and I was like, if we played this movie back in like 1920s, people's heads would just roll. They wouldn't comprehend what was going on. But that also, you saying the knives, like how far they could go in, that's almost like that Deadpool, like X-Men Wolverine Origins, where Deadpool's knives came out like super long, and you're like, there's no way he could retract that back into his arm and still fold them. But
Right.
I feel like that was the same thing with Aquaman or Black Manta, where he like brought out this giant ass sword, and I'm like, where does that come from?
His is a little more practical just because it's in the exosuit.
Okay.
Right. So like when I did my Wolverine Claw video, I talked about the like how long could Wolverine's claws possibly be and really actually be realistic. So I think it was about 10 inches
Up to the
or
elbow.
it'd be like 8 inches that you could store claws inside your forearm, or at least in mine. But Wolverine's supposed to be tiny. He's supposed to be like 5'2".
He's a little man.
something
Like Hugh
like-
Jackman's
or
the only
5'4"?
reason why he's big. Yeah.
Right, he's supposed to be super short, so his would be smaller. So if you say 8 inches, we'll say that the claws could be 8 inches long, roughly inside of his arm, but it's about 3 inches in your the bones in your hand right here. If his claws came the entire way out, they would move around. You know, there's no anchor. Like there'd be one anchor point, so they would be floppy. So if they came out and they stayed in his hand, so that there was 2 anchor points, so that he could climb with them and do all the stuff that he does with them, cut stuff, not just stab. They would have to stay in, so they would only be able to be 5 inches outside of his hands. Like that's a realistic length.
Sometimes
In the
5
comics,
inches is all
they're-
you need, man.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was in the comics. I looked it up.
It's all
I
on
think
how you use them.
I think originally they were supposed to be, according to Marvel, I think they might have been over 20 inches long, and then they reduced them and they were like 17.
Okay.
And then they said they were 12, or I think maybe they ended up being 12 in the movies. They were, no matter what, they were too long all the time because they could only be 5 inches long for them to be realistic and practical.
That's fair. Now, sticking with the X-Men, Gambit. Now, Gambit throws energy charged cards.
Well, that's magic.
That's magic.
Yeah, like practical and realism, I thought kind of two different things.
Yes.
Something practical, yeah, is it useful? Like Black Manta was the first one where I'm like, it's not realistic or practical.
Yeah,
You
but
could argue
it looks
Captain
so
Shield
cool.
is practical, but definitely not realistic. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
practical, it protects him, and he can. It's a ranged attack, so it's practical for him. But yeah, realistic. But you were talking about Gambit. And the charged cards.
and the heavy trench coat.
Yeah, the trench.
And what is this sock about?
And
Like
he's
the head
supposed
sock.
to be real strong, but the just having what is he, afraid of the rain? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, why would you wear a trench coat? I mean, I don't think it would be terribly restrictive.
Yeah.
But it also just wouldn't make sense because you could just grab that trench coat and pull him all over the place. Plus, the guy's from New Orleans. Have you ever been to New Orleans? It is hot.
It rains.
It does rain, but it's crazy hot there. Like, who
That's
wants to
our
run around in a
cameraman.
leather trench coat all day long when it's like 105
Down
degrees
the
outside
bayou,
with 90% humidity?
And just as a martial arts expert, that would be a hindrance, wouldn't it?
I know, but
This big. I mean, it works for Neo. We talked about, but
he's in the Matrix,
and he
though.
controls it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so it's like he can bend the laws of the Matrix.
So it's like a dream, realistic. Because you could do anything in a dream. You just have to think of that in the dream.
He's the greatest ambient dreamer ever, or lucid dreamer ever. Right?
I'd probably die in my dreams.
Yeah,
Is that possible? Die in your dreams? Anyway, we're getting off topic.
That's next episode.
Can you die in your dreams? So I think, guys, I mean, we discussed this. You heard us. We had Jairus discuss it. So, Jairus, I think it's the closest thing we have to like a legitimate rocket science, rocket scientist, as all of us are just a bunch of goons. That just,
I'm a bit of a scientist myself.
You're not. No. Rockets fly, and that was Matt's argument. And you're like, good job, Matt.
I made slime with my daughter.
Guys, so that's, I think, we're sure we tore some of the practicalities apart, but at the end of the day, comic books are meant to be fantastic. We're supposed to enjoy them. Obviously, the real world, we don't have people that fly around and have super strengths, unless you're in Split, the Horde, Overseer. But that's why we enjoy them. You know, some suits, you're like, there's absolutely no way she could go into battle like this, and there's no way Superman can fly and his outfit not fall off, you know? But that's why we enjoy comics. That's why we watch movies. We don't go in to be like, it's not scientifically accurate.
That's what Star Trek's for.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. So, guys, with that, we're gonna sign off. I'm Fernando Benitez. You can find me at Fernie_Sanders on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to message the show, you can find us on Fortress of Solid Dudes 17@gmail.com. Mail us some answers, or some answers. Mail us, answers questions. If we have any questions.
That's a good point, actually. If you want us to talk about specific superheroes, if you think we should have covered something and we didn't, let us know who they are. We could do another one of these where we discuss a superhero of your choice.
Exactly. If you want to find us on Twitter and Instagram, we're at Fort. I held that F so long. We're at Fort_ Solid Dudes.
Yep.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm sick. That's what it is. But I mean, if you watch any other show or hear any other podcast, I'm pretty inept. So that's not here nor there.
Don't sell yourself short, brother.
Matt, where can they find you, man?
Twitter and Instagram handle are both the same, Maticusfinch83.
Okay.
And that's probably the best way. We don't got to get Facebook, but obviously we prefer if you hit us up on the actual main page.
Yeah.
So like Jairus was saying, tell us what you want to hear about, because we're still trying to find our audience, and we can only do that with some feedback. So
we're always, looking to improve.
Let us know what we're good at. Let us know what we're terrible at. Let us know you're out there. Yeah. And with that, I just opened up the comment section to a world of hurt. So, Jairus, I'm going to toss that over to you, brother.
Jairus of all on social media, but mostly YouTube. Jairus, Jairus of all. Jairus of all, master of none, often better than a master of one. On YouTube.
Slick.
Yeah, well, you actually find me on his video that's dropping soon. I got punched with the power fist.
He got fisted.
I got power fisted. That thing is no joke. So, if you guys see it, check it out.
Yeah, go to his channel, man. There's some great entertaining stuff. I got lost on there for like 45 minutes. I really dug it. Yeah, it was just like, you start with one thing. I'm like, I'm just going to watch the Wolverine video. Let me check this out too. So yeah, you put out some really good stuff, man. So thanks, definitely go and check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that, guys, we'll say goodbye and we'll see you next time. Peace. Bye, guys.